The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy that flows through stars, planets, and the vast emptiness between. For millennia, Jedi and Sith alike believed this truth to be absolute, that nothing existed beyond the Force's infinite reach. They were wrong. The sky above Coruscant split open, not with the familiar distortion of hyperspace or the violent rupture of a bombing. This was something else entirely. Reality itself tore like fabric, and through the wound poured light that had never touched this galaxy, golden, terrible, and utterly alien to the Force. Thunder rolled across the Ecumenopolis without clouds, without storm, without any natural explanation the Republic's sensors could provide. Every Force-sensitive being within 1,000 parsecs felt it simultaneously, a presence that didn't flow with the Force but stood apart from it, untouchable and absolute. On Mount Olympus, Zeus had grown weary of ruling pantheons and mortals who already knelt. He had sensed it across the dimensional void, a power that claimed dominion over all living things, a cosmic force that demanded balance and submission without offering glory or acknowledgement in return. To a god-king who had overthrown his own father and commanded the very heavens, this was intolerable. The Force was a rival that didn't even know it had one. So Zeus came to conquer it. He materialized above the Jedi Temple, hovering in the sky like a second sun. His form was magnificent, 12 feet of divine perfection wrapped in white robes that rippled with their own light. A beard of silver gold that crackled with barely contained lightning, eyes that held the weight of eternity. In his right hand, he gripped a spear forged from the first metal ever shaped by divine hands. The air around him ionized, shimmering with heat and power that made Coruscant's perpetual daylight seem dim by comparison. "I am Zeus," his voice boomed across the planet, carried not by technology, but by will alone. Every being on Coruscant heard it in their native tongue, felt it resonate in their bones. King of Olympus, Lord of sky and storm, Father of gods and men, I have come to this realm because I have sensed a power that claims dominion over all things. Let those who serve this Force come forth and explain why they do not kneel before true divinity. In the Jedi Temple's council chamber, 12 of the Order's wisest masters stood in stunned silence. Master Vandar Tokare, ancient and diminutive, reached out with the Force toward the being in the sky. What he found made his centuries of training seem inadequate. The entity wasn't empty in the Force, that would have been comprehensible, like the Yuzhan Vong of ancient prophecy. Instead, Zeus existed as a complete null point, a sphere of absolute independence where the Force simply ended. It flowed around him like water around stone, unable to penetrate, unable to influence. "This is impossible," Master Atris said, her usual composure fracturing. "Nothing exists outside the Force. Nothing can." "Then our understanding is incomplete," Master Vruklamar replied grimly. He had fought in the Great Sith War and thought he had seen every form power could take. This humbled him. Whatever he is, he's not lying about his nature. He believes himself divine, and his power. The temple shook, not from violence, but from Zeus's impatience. A single gesture from the God King sent a pulse of energy rippling outward. Not Force energy, but something older, something that predated the distinction between light and dark. Windows cracked, holocrons flickered. Younger Padawans fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sheer pressure of a presence that demanded worship as naturally as stars demanded space. "I will not wait long," Zeus called out, his voice somehow gentle and terrifying at once. "I have torn down pantheons and cast titans into oblivion. I have no wish to do the same to your order, but I will have acknowledgement. Send your strongest. Let them face me and understand the difference between cosmic energy and divine right." Master Vandar closed his eyes, reaching deep into the Force for guidance. The living Force whispered urgently, showing him fracturing possibilities. Futures where the galaxy burned, where the temple fell, where something fundamental about reality itself changed. But beneath the chaos, he sensed something else. The Force was not afraid. It was curious, as if Zeus's arrival was not a threat, but a question that needed answering. "We must respond," Vandar said finally. but not with violence. Not yet. He has issued a challenge to the Force itself, and in doing so, he has made himself every Force user's concern. Jedi and Sith alike. You want to talk to him? Master Atris asked incredulously. He's demanding we worship him. No, Vandar corrected softly. He's demanding we acknowledge him. There is a difference. And until we understand what he truly is, we must engage with wisdom, not lightsabers. Above them, Zeus smiled. He could feel the deliberation, the fear masked as caution. These Jedi were powerful, yes. Their connection to this Force made them formidable by mortal standards. But they had never faced a god who had conquered death itself, who had reigned for eons before their republic existed. They would learn, as all mortals did, that there were hierarchies even among cosmic powers. The God King spread his arms wide, and lightning danced between his fingers. Not the purple electricity of Sith sorcery, but the pure golden fury of divine thunder. It arced across Coruscant's sky in impossible patterns, writing his name in light that would be visible from orbit. A declaration. A challenge. A promise. The Force trembled, and for the first time in galactic history, it encountered something that refused to tremble back. The Jedi Temple's main hall had never been designed for a confrontation like this. Built to inspire peace and reflection, its soaring architecture now felt inadequate, too small to contain divinity, too open to protect against it. Zeus descended through the massive entrance with the deliberate slowness of a predator that knew its prey couldn't escape. Each footfall rang against the polished stone with unnatural resonance, as if the temple itself recognized something older than its foundations. 50 Jedi stood in formation, lightsabers unignited, but hands ready. They represented every tier of the Order, masters who had survived the Mandalorian Wars, knights who had hunted Sith across the Outer Rim, Padawans whose connection to the Force burned with youthful intensity. All of them felt the same wrongness. This being didn't just resist the Force, he existed in defiance of it. Where he walked, the living Force receded, leaving a void that felt like suffocation. Master Vandar stood at the formation's center, his small frame belying the weight of his presence. Beside him, Master Vrook kept one hand on his lightsaber hilt, while Master Atris maintained a facade of diplomatic calm. Behind them, the council had assembled in full, a show of strength that would have intimidated Sith Lords. Zeus looked upon them and laughed. "This is how you greet a god?" His voice filled the hall without echoing, bypassing acoustics entirely. "With warriors instead of priests, I am almost impressed. Almost." "We are not warriors," Vandar replied, his aged voice steady. "We are servants of the Force, and we stand before you not in aggression, but in defense of truth. You claim divinity, but we have seen many beings of great power claim such. The Force reveals all deceptions." Zeus's eyes narrowed, and the temperature in the hall spiked 20 degrees in an instant. "The Force reveals nothing to me because I permit it no purchase. I am Zeus, son of Kronos, who devoured his own children to prevent their rise. I overthrew him and claimed the heavens as my birthright. I have cast down titans whose strength could shatter worlds. Your Force is a tool, an energy field that connects living things. I am a god, eternal, absolute, and bound by nothing but my own will." "Then you do not understand the Force," Master Atris said, stepping forward despite Vrook's warning gesture. "It is not merely energy. It is the fabric of existence itself. The balance between all things. Life and death, creation and destruction, light and dark. All flow from the Force. If you exist, then you exist within it, whether you acknowledge this or not." The God King's expression shifted from amusement to genuine curiosity. He moved closer to Atris, and every Jedi tensed. Zeus studied her with eyes that had witnessed the birth of civilizations, and when he spoke again, his tone carried less arrogance and more philosophical interest. "You speak of balance as if it were inevitable. On Olympus, balance is what we impose, not what imposes upon us. When mortals grow too numerous, we send plagues. When they grow too proud, we humble them. The natural state of existence is chaos, We gods provide the order." He gestured to the assembled Jedi. "You believe your force does the same, but look at your galaxy. War consumes it. Jedi and Sith clash endlessly. Entire species slaughter each other. Where is your vaunted balance?" "Balance is not peace," Vandar answered. "It is the eternal struggle between light and darkness, with neither permitted to dominate absolutely. The Force does not intervene as you describe. It guides those who listen. We Jedi choose to serve the light, while Sith embrace the dark. Both are necessary." Zeus laughed again, but this time it carried genuine mirth. "Necessary? You claim that evil is necessary? How wonderfully honest. On Olympus, we make no such pretensions. We rule because we have the power to rule, and mortals obey because they are wise enough to recognize their limitations. Your force offers no such clarity. It whispers and suggests, leaving beings to stumble through moral ambiguity." He raised his spear, pointing it at the council. "I offer something better. Certainty. Worship me, and I will bring order to your chaos. Oppose me, and I will demonstrate why gods have commanded reverence since the first mortal looked upon lightning and knew fear." The moment crystallized. Master Vrook ignited his lightsaber, its green blade humming defiance. Within seconds, 50 more blades blazed to life. Green, blue, yellow, a constellation of plasma that bathed the hall in multicolored light. The Jedi moved into defensive forms, their connection to the Force deepening as they prepared for combat against an enemy that shouldn't exist. Zeus didn't move. He simply smiled, and the lightning came. It wasn't the crude electricity of technology, or even the refined brutality of Sith lightning. This was the primal fury of storms given consciousness and malice. Golden bolts erupted from Zeus's form in every direction simultaneously, moving faster than thought. Jedi raised their lightsabers in desperate blocks, and the weapons, designed to deflect energy, held for exactly 3 seconds before the sheer volume overwhelmed them. Master Kavar threw up a force barrier that cracked like glass. Master Zez Kai El redirected one bolt only to be struck by 2 more. Padawans were thrown backward, their robes smoking, nervous systems shocked but not killed. Zeus had modulated his power with surgical precision. In 10 seconds, 47 Jedi lay incapacitated. Only the council members remained standing, and even they struggled against the assault. Then Zeus stopped. The lightning ceased as abruptly as it began, leaving the hall filled with ozone and groaning Jedi. The God King hadn't moved from his position, hadn't even raised his spear in true combat stance. He looked down at the fallen with something almost like disappointment. "You wield your energy blades well, and your connection to this force gives you strength beyond ordinary mortals," Zeus said quietly. "But you fight like mortals nonetheless. You have never faced true divinity, and so you cannot comprehend the gap between us." He turned to Master Vandar, who remained standing through sheer force of will. "I came here offering acknowledgement, not destruction. But I see now that you require a demonstration of what I am. So let me show you what it means to challenge a god." Zeus raised both hands skyward, and Coruscant's weather, carefully controlled by millennia of climate engineering, rebelled. Storm clouds boiled into existence above the temple, spawned not from atmospheric pressure, but from divine command. Thunder rolled across the planet's city, and rain began to fall. Real rain, not the controlled precipitation of water reclamation systems. Lightning struck the temple's spires in rhythmic patterns, each bolt carving Zeus's name in ancient Greek into the dura steel. Master Vandar felt the force crying out, showing him possibilities spiraling into darkness. This being was rewriting the rules of reality through sheer will, imposing his existence upon a galaxy that had never known gods in the flesh. And worse, he could feel something else. Across Coruscant, on 1,000 worlds, Force sensitives were making choices. Some knelt in spontaneous worship, others prepared for war. The galaxy was fracturing before Zeus had even truly begun his campaign. "We cannot kill him," Vandar whispered to Vrook. "Our weapons mean nothing." "Then what do we do?" Vrook asked, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. Master Vandar closed his eyes, reaching out through the Force to touch minds across the galaxy. If the Jedi could not stop Zeus alone, then perhaps they needed the one truth the Order rarely acknowledged. Sometimes, the enemy of your enemy must become your ally, however temporarily. "We contact the Sith," Vandar said. "May the Force forgive us." Above the temple, Zeus felt the shift in the Force. New presences gathering, dark and hungry. He smiled. Finally, this would become interesting. On Korriban, in a tomb carved from red stone and dark purpose, Darth Nihilus felt the disturbance first. As a being who consumed Force energy to sustain his existence, he was uniquely attuned to disruptions in the cosmic order. What he sensed made him pause mid-meditation, his mask turning toward the distant stars where Coruscant lay. Something had arrived that the Force could not touch, a void more complete than even his own hunger-ravaged presence, something that tasted of power beyond anything he had ever consumed. Darth Sion, his body held together by pain and darkside will alone, materialized from the shadows. "You feel it too." The Jedi sent out a call across the Force. Desperate. Afraid. More than fear, came a third voice. Darth Kreia, emerged from deeper within the tomb. Her Force sight perceiving layers of meaning invisible to those still dependent on mere eyes. They have encountered something that challenges their precious philosophy, something that exists beyond the Force's dominion. "Tell me, Sion, what terrifies a Jedi more than death?" "Irrelevance," Sion answered. Kreia smiled. "Precisely. And if this being truly stands outside the Force, then he proves what I have long suspected. The Force is not absolute. It is a chain we have allowed to bind us, Jedi and Sith alike." She turned to Nihilus. "Gather what Sith Lords remain from the war, not to save the Jedi, but to witness this anomaly ourselves. If this being can teach us to exist independent of the Force, we may finally achieve what generations of Sith have failed to accomplish: true freedom from destiny." Across the galaxy, on a dozen hidden worlds and fortress stations, Sith Lords received Kreia's call. Some came out of curiosity, others from hunger for power, still others from pure survival instinct. They recognized the truth immediately. If something could challenge the Jedi Order's fundamental understanding of reality, it could just as easily unravel the Sith's carefully constructed philosophies. Better to face this threat united than be destroyed separately. Within hours, 12 Sith Lords converged on Coruscant's orbit aboard vessels that made no attempt to hide their dark side signatures. The Republic fleet scrambled to respond, but before a single shot could be fired, Master Vandar's voice broadcast across all channels. "Stand down. They come by our invitation." The galaxy reeled. Jedi and Sith, together? Zeus watched the Sith ships descend with a predator's appreciation. Finally, warriors with ambition to match their power. He could sense the darkness radiating from the approaching vessels, not absence of light, but something more complex. These beings had embraced passion, anger, and desire as sources of strength. They reminded him of the Olympians in their golden age, before centuries of governance had dulled their edge. The Sith Lords materialized outside the temple in a display of deliberate intimidation. Darth Nihilus stood at the center, his presence a yawning void that made even veteran Jedi Masters instinctively step backward. Beside him, Darth Sion's broken body radiated such pain that Padawans winced in sympathetic agony. Kreia positioned herself slightly apart, her aged face betraying nothing but cold calculation. Behind them, 9 other Sith, each a master of different dark arts, formed a half-circle of contained violence. Master Vandar stepped forward, the weight of what they were attempting clear in every line of his ancient face. "Sith Lords, you answer our call knowing full well we remain enemies. Why?" "Because your enemy has made himself ours as well," Kreia replied smoothly. "This being threatens the Force itself. If he succeeds in his challenge, both our orders become obsolete. The Jedi would lose their precious light, and the Sith would find the dark side equally meaningless. Extinction cares nothing for philosophy." Zeus descended from his position above the temple, landing with enough force to crack the plaza's stone. He studied the assembled Sith with obvious interest, his divine senses cataloging each unique signature of power. These were not the disciplined peacekeepers he had scattered earlier. These were killers, conquerors, beings who had touched something primal and let it transform them. "And here is the other half of your divided force," Zeus said, his voice carrying approval. "The Jedi speak of balance, but you embody the truth they cannot acknowledge. Power demands hierarchy. The strong rule, the weak serve. This, I understand." He pointed his spear at Kreia. "You, priestess, I sense cunning in you. Why do you truly come? Not to save Jedi philosophy, certainly." Kreia met his gaze without flinching, something few mortals managed. "I come to learn, God King. You claim to exist outside the Force. If true, you possess knowledge worth any price. The Force has manipulated Jedi and Sith for millennia, creating endless cycles of war and peace. If you can teach us to break those cycles, to exist as you do, independent and absolute, then perhaps we Sith will have finally achieved our ultimate goal." Zeus threw back his head and laughed, genuine and thunderous. "Honesty. Finally a mortal who speaks without pretense. Yes, I can teach you to exist beyond your Force's reach, but the price would destroy what you are. Divinity is not learned, priestess. It is inherited or claimed through conquest of other gods. You are powerful among your kind, but you are still fundamentally mortal. The gap cannot be bridged through training or dark rituals." "Then why come here at all?" Darth Sion demanded, his ruined voice scraping like broken glass. "If you're so far above us, what do you gain from challenging the Force? Gods don't descend to prove themselves to insects." The smile faded from Zeus's face, replaced by something more serious. He looked up at Coruscant's artificial sky, then beyond it to the stars themselves. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made even the Sith Lords feel small. "Because the Force offends me. I have ruled Olympus for ages beyond counting. I have commanded gods, titans, and mortals. Every being under my dominion knows my name and acknowledges my authority. But your Force?" He clenched his fist and lightning crackled around it. "Your Force is a passive power, a cosmic energy that claims dominion through mere existence. It guides without commanding, influences without controlling. It is a coward's version of godhood. All the power, none of the responsibility. I came to this galaxy to prove a fundamental truth. Conscious will must always supersede impersonal force. A king is superior to a law of nature." Master Vandar felt the Force ripple with something he had never experienced before. Indignation. The living Force itself was responding to Zeus's challenge, gathering power in ways that defied prophecy or vision. He reached out to warn both Jedi and Sith, but before he could speak, the plaza beneath them began to glow. Symbols manifested in the stone, not carved but appearing spontaneously, written in pure Force energy. They formed a circle around Zeus, containing script in no language any database recognized yet somehow comprehensible to every Force-sensitive present. The message was simple and terrible. The Force rejects your challenge. Zeus looked down at the glowing symbols and smiled wider. "Finally. I was beginning to think your precious cosmic power lacked the courage for direct confrontation." He raised his spear high, and divine lightning erupted from the weapon in a pillar that pierced Coruscant's atmosphere. "Then let us begin properly. I, Zeus, King of Olympus, formally challenge the Force itself to trial by combat. Let it manifest through whatever vessel it chooses, and we shall settle this question of supremacy once and for all," the Force answered. From across Coruscant, from the temple and beyond, brilliant light began gathering. Force-sensitive beings collapsed as energy flowed out of them, not stolen, but borrowed, channeled toward a single purpose. Jedi gasped as the light side surged through them. Sith staggered as the dark side responded in kind, and in the space before Zeus, between the assembled orders, something began to take shape. A figure coalesced from pure Force energy, humanoid but impossible, shifting between forms too quickly to track. Male, female, neither. Both. Light and dark in perfect balance. It stood 12 feet tall, matching Zeus's divine stature. And when it spoke, the voice was chorus of billions. Every Force-sensitive being who had ever lived contributing to its words. "We are the Force made manifest. "We accept your challenge, Zeus of Olympus." The God King's eyes blazed with excitement. Finally, a worthy opponent. The plaza shattered as God and cosmic power collided. The Republic had witnessed battles that reshaped planets, orbital bombardments that turned continents to glass, superweapons that cracked worlds in half. But none of those catastrophes compared to what erupted in the heart of Coruscant when Zeus and the Force's avatar clashed. The God King moved first, his spear thrusting forward with speed that transcended physics. Divine metal met concentrated force energy, and the impact produced a shockwave that flattened buildings for 3 kilometers in every direction. The Force avatar didn't block. It couldn't, not in any traditional sense. Instead, it flowed around the attack like water, reforming instantly behind Zeus with a palm strike that should have shattered his spine. Zeus caught the blow one-handed without turning, his divine flesh absorbing energy that would have atomized Durasteel. "Impressive. You can manifest physically, but can you bleed?" Lightning erupted from his body in a sphere of golden fury. The Force avatar dispersed, scattering into 1,000 motes of light that reformed 50 meters away. Where Zeus's power touched the ground, it left scorch marks that radiated unnatural heat. The stone itself rejected the divine energy, unable to process something that predated the galaxy's physical laws. The Jedi and Sith retreated to safe distances, throwing up barriers that proved inadequate the moment Zeus's lightning tested them. Master Vandar led the evacuation of civilians, his small form darting through chaos with practiced efficiency. Nearby, Darth Nihilus simply watched, his hunger momentarily forgotten in fascination. He had consumed Force energy from entire planets. But this battle presented something unprecedented. What happened when an irresistible force met an immovable object? The Force avatar struck back with precision that bordered on precognition. Because it was precognition, the living force knew every possible future, every potential action Zeus might take. Pillars of pure energy erupted from the ground beneath the God King's feet, seeking to impale him through sheer, overwhelming power. Zeus met each pillar with lightning strikes, divine fury canceling cosmic energy in explosions that painted Coruscant's sky with impossible colors. "You know my actions before I take them," Zeus called out, his voice carrying over the destruction. "You see all possibilities and choose your response accordingly. An impressive trick, but you forget. I am eternal. I do not fight to win quickly. I fight to demonstrate inevitability." The God King shifted tactics. Instead of direct attacks, he began to reshape the battlefield itself. His divine will imposed itself on reality, and the plaza began to transform. Stone became marble, Durasteel twisted into bronze, and the temple's architecture shifted toward classical Grecian columns and arches. He was creating a pocket of Olympian reality within the Star Wars galaxy, forcing the Force to operate within rules it had never encountered. The Avatar flickered, its form destabilizing as the laws governing its existence changed. For the first time, it spoke with something resembling strain. "You bend reality to your will. This is not combat. This is rewriting existence." "Exactly," Zeus replied, extending both hands. "I am not merely powerful, I am foundational. Where I stand becomes my domain. Your force flows through all living things, but I am the thing around which reality organizes itself. Do you understand the difference now? You are a law of nature. I am a law unto myself." The sky above Coruscant tore open again, and this time Mount Olympus itself began manifesting. Not the entire mountain, that would have crushed the planet, but a ghostly overlay, a divine superposition that existed partially in both dimensions. Other Olympian gods sensed the connection and stirred, their attention turning toward this strange new realm their king had conquered. Athena, Ares, Apollo, all felt the thread Zeus had woven between galaxies and considered following. The Force Avatar understood the threat. If Zeus could permanently anchor Olympian reality here, the galaxy would have two competing sets of cosmic laws. The Force would fracture, unable to maintain balance when divine will imposed hierarchy. It gathered power from every Force-sensitive being in the galaxy. a desperate, all-encompassing pull that made Jedi and Sith alike scream in shared agony. Darth Traya felt the surge and made a split-second decision. She severed her connection to the Force entirely, a technique she had mastered through decades of study. Better to be deaf to the cosmic song than burned by its crescendo. Around her, other Sith Lords attempted the same with varying success. The Jedi had no such defenses. Their philosophy demanded complete surrender to the Force's will. The Avatar transformed. No longer humanoid, it became a storm of pure potentiality, every possible future condensed into a single moment of overwhelming force. It struck Zeus not with lightning or energy blasts, but with the weight of inevitability itself. Here was the future where he lost. Here was the timeline where his challenge failed. Here was the universe where the Force remained absolute and unchallenged. Zeus roared defiance and met the assault with the one weapon gods possess that transcends all others: the refusal to accept predetermined fate. His divine essence flared brighter, burning away futures and possibilities like kindling. He had overthrown Kronos, who could see all of time. He had cast down Typhon, who embodied chaos itself. He would not bow to probability, no matter how overwhelming. The two powers collided at the conceptual level, and reality screamed. Across Coruscant, beings spontaneously developed Force sensitivity, or lost it entirely. Technology failed or achieved impossible efficiency. The carefully maintained ecological balance of 1,000 terraformed worlds shifted. The Republic's communication networks carried messages sent before they were composed. Time itself hiccuped. Master Vandar felt tears streaming down his aged face. The Force. It's hurt. A cosmic power cannot be wounded. Yet somehow... Zeus is proving his point, Kreia observed coldly, having withdrawn far enough to maintain analytical distance. The Force believed itself absolute. Now it knows otherwise. That knowledge alone changes everything. The battle raged for 17 minutes by Coruscant's clocks, though those present would swear it lasted hours or seconds depending on their perspective. Zeus threw everything at the Force Avatar: lightning that could shatter suns, strength that had crushed titans, shape-shifting that allowed him to exist in multiple forms simultaneously. The Force countered with impossible precision, drawing on billions of years of accumulated wisdom and power. Neither could win. That became clear as the 18th minute approached. Zeus could not destroy something woven into the fabric of existence itself, and the Force could not overcome a god whose divine nature existed outside its jurisdiction. They were incompatible supremacies locked in eternal stalemate. Zeus recognized this first. With a gesture, he withdrew his power, the Olympian overlay fading from Coruscant's sky. The Force Avatar collapsed back into formless energy, dispersing into the billions of beings from which it had been drawn. The plaza looked like a war zone, but the planet stood intact. Barely. The God King straightened his robes and turned to face the assembled Jedi and Sith, all of whom stared at him with new understanding. He had fought the Force itself to a draw. Whatever else happened, that truth would reshape galactic history. "I came seeking dominion," Zeus said quietly, his voice no longer booming with divine authority, but carrying instead the weight of genuine reflection. "I challenged the Force expecting to prove my supremacy. Instead, I have learned something I have not experienced in eons. Limits." He looked at his hands, still crackling with residual lightning. "The Force cannot command me, but neither can I destroy it. We are equals, mutually incompatible equals." "Then what now?" Master Vandar asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zeus smiled. But it was a different smile than before, not predatory, but genuinely intrigued. "Now, I do what gods do when we encounter something we cannot simply conquer. I establish my kingdom within yours. The Force may bind your galaxy, but I will carve out a domain where divine law supersedes cosmic balance. Those who wish to worship something with a face and a voice will have that option. Let your Force compete with true divinity for the hearts of mortals." He turned to the Sith Lords, his eyes gleaming with dark humor. "And you power-hungry fools will have a choice the Force never granted. Serve, oppose, or simply watch as I demonstrate what happens when gods walk among mortals again. Across the galaxy, on a million worlds, beings felt the shift. The Force remained, unchanged and eternal. But now, something else existed alongside it. A divine presence that promised clear hierarchy instead of cosmic ambiguity. The Republic would fragment along religious lines within days. Systems would declare for Zeus or remain loyal to the Force, and both Jedi and Sith would face an enemy neither philosophy had prepared them to fight, a god who kept his promises. Zeus raised his spear toward the stars. Let it be known across this galaxy, I, Zeus, claim dominion over all who freely choose to kneel. The age of the Force's monopoly ends today. Lightning painted his declaration across Coruscant's sky, and in distant systems, worshippers began raising temples to the storm god from beyond the stars. The planet Onderon became Zeus's first conquest, and he achieved it without firing a single bolt of lightning. The fortress world had always balanced precariously between civilization and the savage wilderness that surrounded its walled cities. Its people were warriors by necessity, survivors who understood that strength determined survival. When Zeus descended from orbit aboard a storm that moved against the prevailing winds, the Onderonians didn't see an invader. They saw the answer to generations of prayers to gods their ancestors had abandoned millennia ago. Queen Talia stood atop the palace walls, watching the God King approach through rain that fell in perfect vertical lines despite the wind. Beside her, Jedi Master Kavar, assigned to mediate the planet's ongoing political tensions, felt the Force screaming warnings. But the Onderonians were already moving, not fleeing, kneeling. "Your Majesty, you cannot seriously consider this," Kavar said urgently. "He's using your people's desperation against them. The Force offers guidance without demanding worship." "The Force offers whispers," Talia interrupted, her eyes never leaving Zeus's approaching form. "He offers certainty. Do you know what it's like, Master Jedi, to rule a world where beasts from the jungle destroy entire settlements in a single night? Where we pray to the Force for protection and receive only silence?" She turned to face him, and Kavar saw genuine fury in her expression. "Your order speaks of balance, but balance means accepting suffering as necessary. He promises power. He promises that the strong will protect the weak, that order will be imposed, not suggested." Zeus landed on the palace platform with thunder rolling across the sky in announcement. He had learned from Coruscant. This time, no demands, no threats. Instead, he spoke with the calm authority of a king addressing subjects who simply hadn't recognized their true sovereign yet. "Queen Talia of Onderon, I have observed your struggle. Your people fight beasts that the Force allows to exist because balance demands predators and prey. I offer an alternative. Swear fealty to me, and I will drive every beast from your jungles. Your children will walk in safety. Your cities will expand without fear. All I ask in return is acknowledgement of what you already understand. Power creates order, and I am the greatest power you will ever encounter." "And what of the Republic?" Talia asked. "What of the Jedi Order? They will not simply allow a God King to claim Republic worlds." "The Republic is a bureaucracy that debates while worlds burn," Zeus replied. "The Jedi are philosophers who meditate while your people die. I am a god who acts." He raised one hand, and lightning arced from his fingertips toward the jungle below. It struck with surgical precision, and the roar of beasts echoed across kilometers. Not killed, driven away, terrified by power that spoke in a language older than the Force itself. The Onderonians watched their eternal enemy flee, and the choice became inevitable. Queen Talia knelt. Within minutes, thousands followed. Master Kavar stood alone on the palace wall, watching a Republic world become something else entirely, a theocracy. He reached out through the Force to the Jedi Council, his message urgent and desperate. "Onderon has fallen, not through conquest, but through worship. If we don't act now, he'll take systems across the Outer Rim the same way. He's offering desperate worlds exactly what they want, immediate solutions instead of patient guidance." On Coruscant, Master Vandar received the message and felt centuries of wisdom prove inadequate. "The Jedi cannot fight faith with philosophy. We must find another way." But across the Outer Rim, on 50 worlds plagued by piracy, plague, or political chaos, beings heard of Onderon's transformation. They heard that a god had come, who demanded worship but delivered results. They heard that Queen Talia's people now slept without fear, that the jungles had been tamed in a single day, that divine power had accomplished what Republic bureaucracy and Jedi meditation never could. And they began building temples. Zeus stood on Onderon's highest tower, watching the construction begin. Marble and bronze imported through methods that bypassed Republic trade routes, divine will made manifest as material. His first true temple in this galaxy, modeled after the Parthenon, rising in defiance of the sterile architecture that dominated Republic worlds. "You're creating division," a voice said behind him. Darth Traya had arrived unannounced, as was her way. "The Republic will fragment along religious lines. Jedi and Sith alike will be forced to choose between their Force philosophies and your divine absolutism." "Yes," Zeus agreed simply. "That is precisely my intention. Your galaxy has stagnated under the Force's influence. Endless cycles of Jedi and Sith, light and dark, with neither side ever achieving true victory. I offer a third path: divine monarchy, clear hierarchy, unambiguous power structure." He turned to face her, his expression curious. "Yet you come here not to worship or oppose, but to observe. Why?" Kriya smiled, her thin, calculating smile. "Because you're teaching me something invaluable, God King. The Force has manipulated billions into believing it represents the only source of cosmic power, but you've proven otherwise. If I can understand how you exist outside the Force's reach, I might finally achieve what I've sought for decades: freedom from destiny's chains." "You cannot learn godhood, priestess. I told you this before." "Perhaps not, but I can learn independence, and that may be enough." She gestured toward the rising temple. "Your worshippers below, they're not gaining power. They're trading Force sensitivity for divine favor. Most don't realize it yet, but every prayer to you weakens their connection to the living Force. You're creating a population that will depend on your intervention rather than their own potential." Zeus considered this, then shrugged. "Mortals have always been dependent. At least under my rule, they know exactly what they're dependent on. The Force offers ambiguity and demands faith without proof. I offer proof and demand only acknowledgement." He looked back at the temple. "Within a year, I will have claimed 50 systems. Within 5, a quarter of the galaxy. The Republic will not have a choice but to negotiate with me as an equal power. And your precious Force will learn that it is not the only path to transcendence." Across Onderon, in the newly consecrated temple, the first sacrifices were made, not blood, as Zeus had no taste for mortal suffering in this form, but offerings of technology and art. The Onderonians were learning to worship again, and with worship came something the Republic had never truly provided: certainty. No debates, no political compromise, no philosophical nuance, just the simple equation of devotion for protection. Master Kavar watched from the shadows and knew the galaxy had changed forever. Not through war, but through choice, and that made it infinitely more dangerous. In the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, the Council convened in emergency session. 50 worlds had sent inquiries about Zeus. 20 had formally requested his intervention in local crises. 5 had already begun construction on temples without official authorization. The Republic was fragmenting not along political lines, but along faith-based divisions the Senate had no framework to address. "We must act," Master Vrook insisted. "Every day we deliberate, he converts another system. We should have struck him down on Coruscant when we had the chance." "We tried," Master Atris reminded him quietly. 50 Jedi failed to even slow him. The Force itself fought him to a draw. What action do you propose that wouldn't simply martyr him in his followers' eyes? Master Vandar closed his eyes, reaching deep into the Force for guidance. What he found terrified him. Futures splitting into thousands of incompatible paths. In some, Zeus ruled half the galaxy within a decade. In others, civil war between Force worshippers and God worshippers burned entire sectors. And in a few, barely visible possibilities, something else emerged. A synthesis neither side had considered. "We cannot fight him with power," Vandar said finally. "We must challenge him philosophically. Demonstrate that the Force's way, patient, balanced, dependent on individual choice, produces better outcomes than divine tyranny." "And if we're wrong?" Master Kavar asked via hologram from Onderon. "If his followers genuinely become happier, safer, more prosperous under divine rule?" The Council had no answer. For the first time in millennia, the Jedi Order faced a question their philosophy couldn't immediately resolve. What if the light side wasn't the only path to peace? What if tyranny, wielded by a truly benevolent God, produced better results than freedom balanced on a knife's edge? Zeus felt their deliberation through his divine senses and smiled. The Jedi were already losing, and they knew it. Not because he was destroying them, but because he was forcing them to question everything they believed. And doubt, once seeded, grew like wildfire. On Onderon, the first temple stood complete. Inside, Queen Talia led her people in the first formal prayer to Zeus, King of Olympus, protector of the faithful. The words echoed through the Force, like blasphemy. And across the galaxy, Jedi felt the ripple of beings choosing divinity over cosmic balance. The Republic's fracturing had begun in earnest. Darth Revan arrived on Onderon 3 days after the temple's consecration, and his presence sent shockwaves through both Jedi and Zeus's fledgling theocracy. The legendary Sith Lord, who had been both savior and conqueror, Jedi and Sith, light and dark, walked through the streets wearing neither allegiance openly. His mask concealed expression, but his Force presence radiated controlled curiosity rather than hostility. Zeus received him in the temple's inner sanctum, a chamber of white marble and floating braziers that burned with eternal flame. The God King sat upon a throne that had manifested from divine will rather than craftsmanship, solid gold inlaid with scenes of Olympian conquest, a statement of power that needed no subtlety. "Darth Revan," Zeus greeted, studying the masked figure with genuine interest. "You are legend even among your kind. Jedi who became Sith who became something between. You have worn more faces than even I have assumed. Why come to me now?" Revan's voice emerged flat, filtered through his mask's vocabulator. "Because you represent a variable I've never encountered in all my strategic calculations. I've fought Mandalorians, led Sith armies, commanded the Republic's fleets. I've studied the Force's deepest mysteries and darkest secrets. But you?" He gestured at the temple around them. "You're offering something no Sith Lord has ever successfully provided. Stability through absolute power, without the self-destructive hunger that consumes every dark side master." "You think I'm not hungry for power?" Zeus asked, amused. "Oh, you are. But your hunger is already satisfied. You're a god who has ruled for eons. Sith Lords are mortals grasping for divinity, always reaching, never arriving. That desperation makes them predictable. You, however, have nothing to prove and everything to maintain. That makes you uniquely dangerous." Revan moved closer, his presence a controlled singularity in the Force. "I've come to make you an offer." Zeus leaned forward, intrigued. "A Sith Lord offers a god something? This should be entertaining." "Not an offer of service," Revan clarified. "An offer of alliance. You want to carve out a divine kingdom within this galaxy. I want to reshape the Republic into something that can survive its own corruption. Our goals align." He produced a holographic projector, and star maps blossomed in the air between them. "These systems," red markers highlighted dozens of worlds, "are failing. Republic bureaucracy has abandoned them. Jedi resources are stretched too thin to help, and Sith opportunists raid them for sport. Take these worlds, offer them your divine protection. In exchange, I'll ensure your expansion doesn't trigger unified opposition from either the Republic or the Sith Empire I'm building in the unknown regions." Zeus studied the maps, his divine intellect processing centuries of strategic experience. "You're offering me cannon fodder worlds, the desperate and dying, in exchange for my tacit approval of your own empire building. Clever. But what makes you think I need your permission?" "Because you're smart enough to recognize that rapid expansion creates coalition against you," Revan answered. "Take too many worlds too quickly, and the Jedi, Republic, and Sith will unite against you despite their ideological differences. You've already seen it. They called a temporary truce to face you on Coruscant. Push too hard, and that truce becomes permanent. He gestured at the hologram. But if you expand deliberately, focusing on worlds that are already falling apart, you become a solution rather than a threat. The Republic saves face by claiming you're handling problem sectors they couldn't manage anyway. The Jedi can't argue against stability, even if it's achieved through worship. And the Sith? Revan's mask tilted slightly. The Sith respect strength. You've demonstrated enough to earn provisional cooperation. Zeus laughed, the sound rolling through the temple like distant thunder. You think like a god playing mortal games, Revan. I appreciate that. Very well, I accept your strategic framework, but understand this. I am not your ally. I am a god who has deigned to coordinate with a mortal of exceptional competence. The distinction matters. Noted, Revan replied without offense. One more thing. Your display on Coruscant, fighting the Force itself, has created a philosophical crisis among Force sensitives galaxy-wide. Many are questioning whether the Force is truly absolute. Some are even seeking ways to exist independent of it, as you do. He paused meaningfully. That could serve both our interests. The more beings who doubt the Force's supremacy, the less power the Jedi Council wields. And weakened Jedi make for easier negotiations. You would undermine the Force itself for political advantage? Zeus asked, his tone somewhere between impressed and appalled. The Force has manipulated civilizations for millions of years, Revan said flatly. Perhaps it's time civilizations learn to manipulate back. Zeus stood, his full divine presence radiating through the chamber. You are the most dangerous mortal I've encountered in this galaxy, Revan. Not because of your power, others surpass you in raw Force ability, but because you think 3 moves ahead and feel no loyalty to any philosophy except victory. I like you. That makes you extraordinarily hazardous to my long-term goals. Then it's fortunate we're on the same side, Revan replied. For now. He departed as abruptly as he'd arrived, leaving Zeus alone in the temple with new considerations. The Sith Lord was right. Expansion required strategy, not just power. Zeus had overthrown Kronos through patience as much as strength. He could afford to be deliberate here as well. Over the following weeks, Zeus's influence spread exactly as Revan had suggested. Worlds on the edge of Republic space, plagued by piracy or Mandalorian raids, found themselves under divine protection. Zeus didn't send armies. He simply appeared, demonstrated his power, and offered the simple equation his worshippers on Onderon had already accepted: devotion for security. The results were immediate and undeniable. On Dantooine, colony settlements that had lost dozens of civilians monthly to Kath Hound attacks suddenly found the predators fleeing at the first sign of colonist presence. On Telos, a planet struggling with environmental collapse, Zeus's divine will stabilized tectonic shifts that Republic engineers had failed to address for decades. On Manan, Selkath diplomats found their perpetual neutrality reinforced by a god who cared nothing for Republic Sith politics, but simply declared the ocean world under his personal protection. Each success generated more requests, each miracle created more worshippers, and each new temple built on another world represented a point on the map where the Force's influence diminished and divine authority expanded. The Jedi watched helplessly as their philosophy lost ground. They couldn't argue with results. Worlds under Zeus's protection genuinely thrived. Crime plummeted. Infrastructure improved through what could only be described as divine intervention. Citizens who had spent generations begging the Republic for aid received immediate solutions from a god who demanded only acknowledgement. Master Vandar meditated in the temple gardens, surrounded by plants that connected him to the living Force. But even here, he felt the disturbance, the galaxy's Force presence fragmenting as billions chose worship over balance. The Force didn't weaken exactly, but its influence scattered, diffused across beings who no longer relied on it as their primary source of meaning. "We're losing," Master Atris said, joining him in the garden. "Not militarily, not politically, but philosophically. Zeus is proving that his model works. Because he can be everywhere, do everything," Vandar replied quietly. a personal god who manifests when called. The Force offers connection, but requires interpretation. He offers clarity. The ancient master opened his eyes, and Atris saw genuine fear there. What if he's right? What if the Force's insistence on balance, on allowing darkness to exist as counterpoint to light, is inferior to divine dictatorship by a benevolent ruler? You can't seriously be considering, I'm questioning as Jedi should. Vandar interrupted gently. Zeus forced us to fight him, then forced us to negotiate with Sith, and now forces us to question our most fundamental beliefs. Each step has weakened our certainty, and without certainty, how do we guide the galaxy? On Onderon, Queen Talia stood in the temple's main hall, watching artisans complete frescoes depicting Zeus's arrival. The artwork showed him descending through storm clouds, lightning framing his divine form, with Onderonians kneeling in reverent gratitude. It was propaganda, yes, but propaganda based on observable truth. Her people were safer, happier, more prosperous than they'd been in generations. Your Majesty, one of her advisors said nervously, the Republic Senate has formally censured us for acknowledging Zeus's sovereignty. They're threatening trade sanctions. Talia smiled coldly. Let them threaten. We have something they don't, a protector who actually protects. Tell the Senate that Onderon stands with its God King. If they want our loyalty, they can send their own deity to compete. The advisor hurried off, and Talia returned to watching the frescoes. She felt no doubt. The Force had offered her world nothing but patient guidance that never quite prevented disaster. Zeus had offered immediate action and delivered. The choice wasn't even difficult. Across the galaxy, on 37 worlds now, beings knelt toward Onderon and offered prayers to the storm god from beyond the stars. The Republic fractured along religious lines. The Jedi questioned their purpose, and Zeus, standing in his temple, felt his divine domain expanding with each new worshipper. The galaxy was learning to worship again, and no philosophy could compete with answered prayers. The Sith Empire's response came not from Revan, but from a coalition of Dark Lords who saw opportunity in chaos. On Korriban, in the Valley of the Dark Lords, 12 Sith Masters convened in violation of ancient protocols that forbade such gatherings. Darth Nihilus stood at the center, his hunger temporarily sated by the Force echoes of Zeus's battles. Beside him, Darth Sion radiated impatience, his broken body held together by sheer will and dark side power. Zeus has claimed 40 systems in 6 weeks, Darth Bane observed, his presence commanding despite being younger than most assembled. The Republic hemorrhages worlds daily. The Jedi Council debates philosophy while their influence crumbles. This is the moment we've waited for. The Republic's collapse without requiring our direct intervention. No, Darth Traya said, her voice cutting through the others. This is far more dangerous than Republic collapse. Zeus offers what we Sith have never successfully provided, sustainable tyranny. We conquer through passion and hunger, but we also consume ourselves through it. He conquers through divine right and maintains through eternal existence. If we allow him to establish his theocracy unchallenged, we become obsolete. Then we destroy him, Darth Sion growled. We've all fought gods before, Force wielders who claim divinity. They died like anyone else. He fought the living Force itself to a draw, Kriya reminded them icily. And you propose 12 Sith Lords can accomplish what the Force could not? Your arrogance exceeds even typical Sith standards, Sion. Then what do you suggest? Bane demanded. We cannot allow a God King to establish permanent rule. The Sith thrive in chaos, in the conflict between light and dark. Zeus offers neither, only divine absolutism. Kreia smiled her calculating smile. We don't destroy him, we corrupt him. The assembled Sith Lords fell silent, intrigued despite themselves. Zeus claims to stand outside the Force, Kreia continued, pacing the ancient stones. But he affects the Force through his actions. Every world he claims, every worshipper he gains, creates ripples in the Force. And ripples can be redirected. She turned to face them. What if we could turn his divine power toward dark side ends without him realizing? What if his worshippers' devotion could be channeled into generating dark side energy feeding our rituals and artifacts? You want to make a god our unwitting servant? Bane asked, skepticism and admiration warring in his tone. I want to make him dependent on us, Kreia clarified. Zeus believes he's independent of the Force, but his worshippers aren't. Their prayers, their devotion, their fear, all of it generates Force energy. Currently, it disperses harmlessly. But if we could concentrate it, refine it, transform their worship into dark side power. She let the implications hang. Darth Nihilus stirred, his presence suddenly focused. Through his mask came sounds that approximated words. Consume divine energy. No, Kreia said quickly. Even you couldn't consume a god, Nihilus. But you could feed on his followers' Force signatures, weakening their connection to him while strengthening yourself. Imagine 40 worlds of worshippers, all generating Force energy that you could drain. Zeus would notice his influence weakening but wouldn't understand why. It's ambitious, Darth Bane admitted. Dangerous, but potentially brilliant. If Zeus realizes what we're attempting, then we fight him united, Darth Sion interrupted. 12 Sith Lords working as one. Something our kind rarely achieves, but this threat demands it. The coalition formed through mutual recognition of existential threat. Sith, who would normally kill each other on sight, agreed to temporary alliance, bound not by loyalty, but by shared understanding. Zeus represented something that could end their way of life entirely. Better to risk cooperation than face obsolescence. On Onderon, Zeus felt the dark side stirring in unprecedented patterns. The Sith were planning something, but his divine senses couldn't penetrate their schemes completely. The Force was their medium, not his. And in matters of Force manipulation, even gods had blind spots. He summoned Queen Talia to the temple's inner sanctum. The Dark Force users plot against me. I sense it but cannot see their design clearly. You are mortal, connected to this Force. What would Sith fear most about my presence? Talia considered carefully. Irrelevance, my lord. The Sith gain power through conflict and chaos. You offer order. They would fear a galaxy where their philosophy has no purpose. She hesitated, then continued. But they might also see opportunity. Your worshippers remain connected to the Force, even if you are not. If Sith could manipulate that connection. Zeus's eyes blazed with understanding. They would turn my followers into unwitting batteries for their dark power. Clever. Disgusting. But clever. He stood, lightning crackling around his form. Then I must sever that connection entirely. My worshippers will rely on me alone, with no ties to the Force whatsoever. My lord, that would fundamentally change them, Talia warned. Force sensitivity is part of what makes many species who they are. Severing those connections could have consequences we don't understand. All profound changes have consequences, Zeus replied. Better my followers depend entirely on divine power than be vulnerable to Force manipulation. I will begin with Onderon. Those who worship me will be granted something your galaxy has never known. Absolute independence from the Force's influence. That night, Zeus performed his first true miracle in the Star Wars galaxy. Not lightning or storm control, but fundamental alteration of being's relationship to cosmic energy. He gathered his most devout worshippers in the temple and extended his divine will through them, carefully, surgically, severing their connections to the Force. The process was agonizing. Beings screamed as something fundamental to their existence was cut away. Force-sensitive Onderonians felt their abilities vanish, replaced by emptiness. No, not emptiness. Divine presence. Where the Force had whispered guidance, Zeus now offered direct communion. Where the Force had connected them to all living things, Zeus provided connection to something more focused, himself. When it was done, 5,000 Onderonians stood transformed. They could no longer sense the Force, could no longer be manipulated through it, but they could call upon Zeus directly, and he would answer. Not with subtle guidance, but with immediate divine intervention. Master Kavar felt the disturbance from his hidden observation post in Onderon's wilderness. 5,000 Force signatures simply vanished. not died, not moved. Vanished, as if they had never existed. He reached out desperately through the force, trying to understand, and found only the echo of something that shouldn't be possible. Beings existing in total force void, yet remaining alive and healthy. He immediately sent word to the Jedi Council. Zeus has found a way to sever force connections permanently. He's creating a population that exists outside the force entirely. If he spreads this across his territories, we'll have no way to influence, guide, or even sense entire populations. We'll be blind to whatever he does with them. On Coruscant, the Council received Kavar's message with horror. Master Vandar's hands shook as he read the report. This is unprecedented. This is extinction, not of life, but of the Force's presence in life. If Zeus converts entire populations to force-void existence, the galaxy's balance will shift catastrophically. We must act now, Master Vrook insisted, before he spreads this technique to other worlds. This isn't philosophical debate anymore. This is existential threat to the Force itself. Agreed, Master Atris said, her voice carrying rare urgency. We request emergency session with the Republic Senate. Zeus must be designated an enemy of galactic stability. If the Republic won't act, the Jedi Order must. But in the Senate, Zeus already had allies. Senators from worlds plagued by piracy and corporate exploitation saw him as solution rather than threat. Representatives from outer rim systems that the Republic had abandoned argued passionately that Zeus provided services the Republic had failed to deliver for generations. The vote on designating Zeus an enemy of the state failed 467 to 312. The Republic, paralyzed by internal divisions and competing interests, could not muster unified opposition to a god who delivered results. On Korriban, the Sith Lords received news of Zeus's force-severing technique and understood their window of opportunity was closing. If Zeus converted all his worshippers to force-void existence, their plan to drain power from his followers became impossible. We attack now, Darth Sion declared. All of us together, before he consolidates further. Darth Traya nodded slowly. Agreed. But we don't attack Zeus directly. That's suicide. We attack Onderon. We destroy his first temple, slaughter his converts, prove that divine protection has limits. Force him to respond across multiple fronts simultaneously. And when he comes for us? Darth Bane asked. Krea's smile was cold and certain. Then we spring our trap. I've found something in the ancient Sith archives, a ritual that can bind even gods if performed correctly. We just need to draw Zeus into the right location at the right time. The Sith coalition prepared for war, and across the galaxy, the Force rippled with dark purpose. Jedi and Sith, temporarily aligned against a common threat, prepared to test whether a god could be killed by those who mastered the cosmic power he stood outside. Zeus felt the storm gathering and welcomed it. He had conquered pantheons before. A few Force wielders, no matter how powerful, would prove no different. On Onderon, in his temple of marble and gold, the God King sharpened his spear and waited for his enemies to make their move. The attack on Onderon came at dawn, coordinated across 12 fronts simultaneously with precision that would have impressed Republic military strategists. Darth Nihilus led the orbital assault, his flagship emerging from hyperspace directly above Zeus's temple, unleashing a bombardment designed not to destroy, but to force the God King's attention skyward. On the ground, Darth Sion commanded a legion of Sith assassins who materialized from stealth transports, their objective brutally simple: slaughter Zeus's converts before he could respond. Zeus was in the temple's sanctum when the first strikes landed. He felt the orbital bombardment's approach before sensors registered it, divine awareness transcending technology, and moved with impossible speed. One moment he stood before his throne. The next he materialized in Onderon's upper atmosphere, positioned directly between Nihilus's ship and the temple below. "You dare!" Zeus's voice carried across the void, amplified by divine will to reach every being on the planet. Lightning erupted from his form in a sphere that engulfed the entire battlefield, not the targeted strikes he'd used before, but absolute electrical dominance that declared the sky his domain. Nihilus's flagship weathered the assault through Sith alchemy-reinforced hull plating, but the smaller attack vessels disintegrated instantly. The Dark Lord stood on his bridge, feeling Zeus's power through the force as an absolute void wrapped in violence. He had consumed planets, drained entire populations of force energy. But this was different. This was power that existed independently of what he could consume. Through his mask, Nihilus projected a single word into Zeus's mind, carried on dark force energy. Distraction. Zeus understood instantly. The orbital assault wasn't meant to kill him. It was meant to divide his attention. He turned his divine senses groundward and felt it. His converts dying by the dozens as Sith assassins moved through the temple grounds with brutal efficiency. Beings who had severed their force connections to worship him exclusively now found themselves defenseless against enemies who could sense them through other means: body heat, motion, sound. The God King's fury manifested as a storm that consumed Onderon's sky. He dove toward the planet's surface faster than any ship could track, becoming a lightning bolt made flesh. When he struck the temple grounds, the impact created a shockwave that threw Sith assassins 50 meters in every direction. But the damage was done. 300 of his converts lay dead, their blood staining the marble he had manifested through divine will. Zeus saw them, beings who had trusted his protection, who had severed their deepest connection to cosmic power because he promised absolute safety. And something ancient stirred in the God King's chest. On Olympus, gods had rarely cared deeply for individual mortals. But these people had chosen him over the Force itself. They had made themselves uniquely vulnerable in devotion to his divinity. He would not let their faith be punished. Sith. Zeus's voice rolled across Onderon like thunder given consciousness. You have made a tactical error. You assume that because I stand outside your force, I cannot manipulate it. You were wrong. He raised both hands, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Zeus reached into the Force itself, not to channel it as Force users did, but to impose his divine will upon it. He was a god. Reality bent to accommodate him. If the Force was the fabric of this reality, then he would simply reweave it according to his design. The dark side energy the Sith assassins relied on suddenly inverted. Power they'd drawn from pain and death reversed, flooding back into their bodies with doubled intensity. Sith warriors screamed as their own dark power consumed them from within. Lightsabers flickered and died. Force lightning turned back on its users. In 30 seconds, the ground assault collapsed entirely. Darth Sion watched from a tactical distance, his broken body somehow still functional through darkside will. He had expected Zeus to fight, had even expected heavy casualties. But this was something else. The God King was manipulating the Force without being bound by it, like a composer conducting an orchestra he wasn't part of. It should have been impossible. He's learning too quickly, Sion transmitted to the other Sith Lords. Abort, fall back to Phase 2. But Zeus wasn't finished. He ascended again, this time pursuing Nihilus's flagship with single-minded purpose. The Dark Lord attempted to jump to hyperspace, but Zeus raised his spear and threw it with divine strength. The weapon pierced reality itself, creating a temporary spatial anchor that prevented faster-than-light travel within a 1,000-kilometer radius. Nihilus's ship hung trapped in Onderon's orbit as Zeus approached. The God King tore through the hull with bare hands, divine strength rendering Durasteel irrelevant. Inside, he found the Dark Lord waiting in the ship's meditation chamber, a being so consumed by Force hunger that he existed more as concept than person. You feast on Force energy, Zeus said, studying Nihilus with genuine curiosity. You have made yourself into a wound in the Force, an entropy that consumes life itself. Impressive in a horrifying way. But tell me, what happens when you try to consume divine power instead? Before Nihilus could react, Zeus unleashed a burst of pure divine essence directly into the Dark Lord's hunger. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Nihilus's power, designed to consume Force energy, attempted to drain Zeus's divinity. But divine power wasn't Force energy. It was something older, something fundamental. Trying to consume it was like trying to drink the sun. Nihilus screamed, a sound that transcended his mask's vocoder and echoed across the Force itself. His form destabilized, flickering between corporeal and ethereal as his hunger tried desperately to process energy it had no framework to digest. Zeus watched impassively as one of the galaxy's most terrifying force users thrashed in agony. "I could destroy you," Zeus said quietly. "But you're more useful as a lesson. Return to your Sith colleagues and tell them what happens when they presume to threaten a god's faithful." He released Nihilus, who collapsed to the deck, his power temporarily disrupted, but his existence intact. The spatial anchor dissolved, and the ship immediately jumped to hyperspace, fleeing with its wounded Dark Lord. Zeus returned to Onderon's surface, landing amid the temple grounds where his converts, both living and dead, waited. Queen Talia stood among them, her face pale but determined. She had fought alongside the Jedi advisor Kavar during the assault, and the irony wasn't lost on either of them. A god's follower and a Force user defending the same people. 300 dead, Talia reported, her voice steady despite the grief. Another 100 wounded. The Sith targeted the most devout specifically, those who had already undergone the Force-severing ritual. Zeus knelt beside one of the fallen, a young Onderonian woman whose last expression showed surprise rather than fear. She had believed his protection absolute. He had failed her, not through lack of power, but through divided attention. The Sith had understood something he'd temporarily forgotten. Even gods cannot be everywhere simultaneously. "This is my failure," Zeus said, his voice carrying none of its usual divine authority. Just simple, terrible acknowledgement. "I promised protection and delivered vulnerability. Your people severed their Force connections because I assured them they would need no other defense. You saved thousands more," Master Kavar said, approaching cautiously. The Jedi had stayed during the battle despite having every reason to flee, a fact Zeus noted with approval. "The Sith came to prove your protection has limits. Instead, you demonstrated that attacking your followers brings swift retribution." "Retribution doesn't resurrect the dead," Zeus replied. He stood, looking across the assembled survivors. "On Olympus, when mortals died, their souls descended to Hades. I had no power over death itself. That was my brother's domain. Here, in this galaxy, what happens to those who die serving me?" "They become one with the Force," Kavar said quietly. "Their consciousness joins the cosmic energy, their individuality dissolving into universal connection. Except these," Zeus gestured to the fallen converts. "They severed their Force connections. Where do their souls go now?" The question hung in the air, unanswered and terrifying. Kavar reached out through the Force, searching for the departed converts' signatures. He found nothing. Not the peaceful dissolution of consciousness joining the Force, but complete absence. They hadn't become one with cosmic energy. They had simply ended. "They're gone," Kavar whispered, horror dawning in his expression. "Truly gone. No Force presence, no lingering consciousness. You didn't just sever their connection to the Force, you severed their immortality within it." Zeus felt the weight of that revelation settle on his divine shoulders. On Olympus, the gods had been functionally immortal, but mortals had always had Hades, a guaranteed afterlife, however grim. Here, he had accidentally condemned his most faithful followers to absolute oblivion upon death. The irony was devastating. In granting them independence from the Force, he had stolen their one guarantee of continued existence. "Can it be reversed?" Zeus asked Kavar directly. "Can their Force connections be restored?" "I don't know," the Jedi admitted. "The Force is not my plaything to manipulate at will. I serve it. I don't command it. And you," he gestured at Zeus, "you've created something unprecedented. Beings who exist in Force void yet remain alive. The restoration might be impossible, or it might require your direct intervention in ways even you don't understand yet." Zeus looked at Queen Talia. "Did you know? When you underwent the ritual, did you understand you were trading your afterlife for divine protection?" Talia met his gaze without flinching. "I understood I was severing something fundamental. I accepted that risk because my people needed protection. The Force never adequately provided. I still believe that choice was correct." She gestured to the survivors. but they deserve to know the full cost now. No more conversions until we understand what we've done." The God King nodded slowly, respect for the mortal queen growing. She had committed to his service fully, but she wasn't blindly devoted. That integrity mattered. "Agreed. No more force-severing rituals until I can guarantee those who die in my service have somewhere to go." Zeus turned to Kavar. "Jedi, you stayed and fought when you could have fled. You protected my followers despite your order's opposition to everything I represent. Why?" Kavar shrugged slightly. "Because they were innocent beings under attack. The Force teaches compassion, not conditional compassion. Your followers deserved protection regardless of my opinions about their god." He paused, then added carefully, "Though I hope this assault has shown you something important. Absolute power without understanding creates vulnerabilities. The Force may be ambiguous and frustrating, but it's also interconnected in ways that provide mutual protection. Your converts' isolation made them targets." "A fair point," Zeus conceded. "Though I would argue the Sith attacked precisely because they fear what my followers represent. Escape from the Force's cycles of conflict." "Perhaps," Kavar acknowledged. "Or perhaps they attacked because any being claiming dominion over others invites resistance. Gods and tyrants face the same fundamental problem. The strong resist submission." Zeus smiled grimly. "Then it's fortunate I've had eons of practice managing resistance." In orbit, Darth Sion's ship rendezvoused with the rest of the Sith coalition. Nihilus lay in the meditation chamber, his power slowly reconstituting itself after Zeus's divine assault. The other Dark Lords gathered around the strategic display, reviewing battle data with professional brutality. The assault failed to destroy Zeus, but it succeeded in revealing critical information, Darth Traya said, her tone clinical. "First, Zeus can manipulate the Force despite standing outside it. That's more dangerous than we anticipated. Second, his converts are vulnerable when separated from his direct protection. Third, and most important," she brought up sensor data from the assault. "He showed genuine emotional response to their deaths. Gods who care about mortals develop exploitable weaknesses." "You want to use his followers as hostages," Darth Bane observed. "Not hostages. Leverage," Krya corrected. "Zeus came to this galaxy expecting to dominate through superior power. He didn't expect to develop actual concern for those who worship him. That concern is the weakness we exploit." "And the ritual you mentioned?" Darth Sion asked. "The one that can supposedly bind gods?" Krya produced an ancient holocron, its crystalline structure pulsing with dark power. Sith Lord Vitiate once attempted to consume all life on Zeus to achieve immortality. He failed, but his research produced this, a binding ritual that chains beings to specific locations through their own power. The stronger the target, the more effective the prison. She looked at each assembled Dark Lord. "We need Zeus to voluntarily come to a place of our choosing, and we need him emotionally compromised when he arrives, focused on rescue rather than caution." "You want to kidnap his followers and use them as bait," Bane said, understanding dawning. "Not all of them. Just one who matters." Krya smiled her cold smile. "Queen Talia, the mortal who led Onderon to worship him, the one he's shown respect toward. Take her, and Zeus will come. And when he does, we spring the trap that turns his divine power into his own prison." The Sith Lords exchanged glances, each calculating risks and benefits. Finally, Darth Sion spoke. "When do we move?" "Soon," Krya replied. "But first, let Zeus think he's won. Let him believe the Sith coalition is broken after this failed assault. Pride makes even gods careless." On Onderon, Zeus stood in his temple as workers cleared the dead and tended the wounded. He had fought the Sith to a tactical victory, but the strategic situation remained complex. His converts had died because he couldn't protect them all simultaneously. The Force-severing ritual had condemned souls to oblivion. And somewhere out there, Sith Lords plotted revenge with the patience of beings who had already died multiple times and come back stronger. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Zeus felt something he rarely experienced: uncertainty. Not about his power, that remained absolute, but about the wisdom of imposing divine rule on a galaxy whose fundamental laws he still didn't fully understand. Queen Talia approached, carrying a datapad with casualty reports and reconstruction plans. "My lord, the people want to hold a memorial service. They're asking if you'll speak." Zeus looked at her, this mortal queen who had bet everything on his divinity and now helped him navigate the consequences of his own promises. "What would you have me say, Talia? That their loved ones died as martyrs to divine glory? That their sacrifice strengthens our cause?" "Tell them the truth," Talia said simply. "That you failed them, that you're learning, and that you'll do better. Gods who admit mistakes earn deeper loyalty than gods who pretend infallibility." Zeus studied her for a long moment, then laughed, genuine and without irony. "You would have made an excellent goddess, Queen Talia. Very well. I will speak truth to my followers, and we will mourn together." That evening, as twin suns set over Onderon, Zeus stood before 5,000 converts, and spoke not as a demanding god, but as a ruler acknowledging failure and promising improvement. The Jedi would have called it weakness. The Sith would have called it exploitable vulnerability. But the Onderonians called it something else, worthy of worship. The abduction happened 3 weeks after the failed assault, when Onderon had begun rebuilding and Zeus's attention had turned to consolidating his holdings across 42 systems. Queen Talia was inspecting reconstruction efforts in the lower city when the strike team materialized from nowhere, not forced stealth, but genuine technological cloaking enhanced by Sith alchemy. Darth Sion led them personally, his broken body moving with horrifying speed as he cut through Talia's guards in seconds. Master Kavar engaged immediately, his green lightsaber meeting Sion's crimson blade in a shower of sparks. "You attack under diplomatic protection. This violates—" "Gods don't recognize Republic law," Sion snarled, driving Kavar back through pure aggression. "And we Sith certainly don't." Talia fought with the combat training all Onderonian royalty received, but against dark-side-enhanced warriors, skill meant little. She managed to wound 2 assassins before Darth Traya appeared behind her, aged fingers touching pressure points that induced instant paralysis. The queen collapsed, conscious but immobile. "Nothing personal, Your Majesty," Kreia said softly. "You're simply too valuable as leverage. Zeus has proven he cares about his followers, unusual for a god. That care is the weakness we exploit." They vanished into a waiting stealth ship before Zeus could respond, leaving only dead guards and a furious Jedi Master. Kavar immediately sent an emergency transmission to the temple, knowing what would come next. Zeus felt Talia's distress through the divine connection they shared, not force-based, but rooted in worship and oath. One moment he was adjudicating a dispute between colonies, the next he was pure lightning streaking toward the abduction site. He materialized beside Kavar amid the carnage, his divine presence making the air itself shimmer with barely contained fury. "Where?" Zeus demanded, his voice scraping like grinding stone. "They took her through hyperspace," Kavar replied, checking his scanner. "No tracking signature, no destination trace. They could be anywhere in the galaxy by now." He hesitated, then added, "This is a trap. You understand that, yes? They want you to come after her emotionally compromised, not thinking tactically." "I am aware," Zeus said coldly. "I have lived for eons, Jedi. I recognize ambush setups. But you mistake something fundamental. I am not bound by caution. I am a god. Traps are for mortals who can die permanently." Lightning crackled around his form. "Tell me everything you know about Sith strongholds. Every planet, every fortress, every tomb where they might take a hostage." Over the next 6 hours, Zeus and Kavar worked together in an alliance that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. The God King listened as the Jedi detailed Sith territories from Republic intelligence. Korriban, Dromund Kaas, Zeost, dozens of dark strongholds scattered across known space. Zeus cross-referenced each location against his divine senses, reaching out across the galaxy with awareness that transcended distance. Finally, he felt it. Talia's presence, faint but unmistakable, on Zeost, the ancient Sith world where Lord Vitiate had once attempted his immortality ritual. The location was deliberately symbolic, a place where gods had been challenged before. "It's Ziost," Zeus declared. "They're holding her in the old ritual chambers beneath the primary temple. And they're not hiding. They want me to find her." "Then don't go," Kavar urged. "Send your converts, call upon the Republic military, petition the Jedi Council for assistance. Anything except walking into an obvious trap alone." Zeus looked at the Jedi with something approaching pity. "You still don't understand what I am, do you? I walked into Tartarus to chain Kronos. I descended into the void to bind Typhon. I have stormed realms where physics cease functioning and returned with godhood intact." He turned toward the sky. "The Sith believe their trap can hold me. Let them learn otherwise." He departed in a pillar of lightning that pierced Onderon's atmosphere, leaving Kavar alone with a terrible certainty. Regardless of who won the coming confrontation, the galaxy would be fundamentally altered by its outcome. Zeus traveled faster than hyperspace, moving through reality's fabric using divine prerogative rather than technological shortcuts. He arrived above Ziost in minutes, the dead planet's red surface pockmarked with ruins from millennia of dark power. He descended directly toward the coordinates where Talia waited, making no attempt at stealth or tactical advantage. Let the Sith see him coming. Let them understand that gods answered challenges head-on. The temple's entrance yawned before him, ancient stone carved with Sith script that promised power and threatened death. Zeus walked through without hesitation, his divine senses cataloging every trap, every defensive measure the Sith had prepared. 43 Force wielders waited in ambush positions. 17 technological traps designed to contain or redirect energy. And deeper, in the ritual chamber, 12 Sith Lords arranged in a circle around Talia, who knelt bound but unharmed in the center. Darth Traya stood before the others, her presence commanding despite her aged frame. "Zeus, King of Olympus, welcome to Ziost. Thank you for arriving so promptly. Release her," Zeus said simply, lightning dancing between his fingers. "And I will grant you quick deaths instead of prolonged agony." "We have no intention of dying today," Kreia replied, "nor of releasing your queen. She serves her purpose simply by existing in this chamber, bait that drew a god into circumstances he cannot win." She gestured at the circle of Sith Lords. "You've fought us individually and proven superior, but we Sith rarely work together because we rarely find threats that demand it. You are that threat." Zeus laughed. 12 Sith Lords against a god? Those are poor odds, for you. "We're counting on your arrogance," Kreia said. "You believe nothing can bind you, nothing can limit your divine power. But Lord Vitiate discovered something during his failed immortality ritual. Power, any power, can be redirected against itself. The stronger the source, the stronger the binding." She raised her hands, and the other Sith Lords did likewise. "We don't need to defeat you, Zeus. We just need to chain you." The ritual activated instantly. The chamber's floor blazed with Sith runes that had been carved over millennia, each symbol representing a different aspect of binding and containment. The 12 Sith Lords channeled Force energy through the symbols, creating a network of dark power that reached toward Zeus like grasping tendrils. But instead of targeting him directly, the ritual did something more insidious. It targeted his connection to his worshippers. Every prayer ever offered to Zeus, every oath sworn in his name, every thread of devotion that connected him to 42 worlds of faithful, all of it suddenly became anchor points. The Sith weren't trying to bind Zeus through force power he didn't possess. They were binding him through the very worship that had allowed him to establish divine presence in this galaxy. Zeus felt it immediately, a pulling sensation, as if reality itself was trying to drag him into the ritual circle. His divine essence, spread across systems through worship and answered prayers, was being used as leverage against him. The more faithful he had, the more anchor points the ritual possessed. His success had become his vulnerability. "Clever," Zeus admitted, fighting against the pull. Lightning erupted from his form, striking at the Sith Lords, but Darth Nihilus absorbed the energy, his hunger proving useful for once. Darth Sion stood immovable, his body already destroyed and rebuilt so many times that pain was meaningless. The other Dark Lords maintained the ritual through sheer disciplined will, each contributing power to the binding. "You've made the mistake all gods eventually make," Kriya said, her voice carrying over the ritual's energy. "You've become attached to your worshippers. That attachment creates responsibility, and responsibility creates obligation. You cannot simply abandon 42 worlds of faithful to save yourself. Your divine nature won't allow it. So you're trapped. Stay and be bound, or flee, and admit your protection was hollow promise." Zeus's eyes blazed with fury and reluctant admiration. The Sith had understood something about godhood that even he had briefly forgotten. True divinity meant more than power. It meant obligation to those who believed. He could break this ritual by severing all connections to his worshippers, abandoning them as Olympian gods had abandoned mortals countless times. But doing so would prove Krea's point, that his promises were empty, his protection conditional, and Zeus, for all his arrogance, had always kept his oaths. "You're right," he said quietly, and the Sith Lords tensed in surprise. "I cannot abandon those who worship me, but you've made your own mistake, Sith. You assume divine obligation equals divine limitation." He stopped fighting the ritual's pull and instead embraced it. "You've bound me to my worshippers? Excellent. Let me show you what happens when a god stops holding back his power out of concern for collateral damage." Zeus released the careful control he'd maintained since arriving in this galaxy. On Onderon, on Dantooine, on Telos and Manaan, and 40 other worlds, his converts suddenly felt divine power flooding through their worship bonds. Not gently, not carefully, but with the overwhelming force of a god who had decided his faithful could handle, must handle, the full weight of his presence. 5,000 beings on Onderon screamed as lightning danced through their nervous systems. 10,000 on Dantooine collapsed as thunder echoed in their minds. Across 42 systems, worshippers became temporary vessels for divine power they had never been meant to channel. Some died instantly, others transformed, their bodies adapting to accommodate energy that transcended biology. Still others achieved something unprecedented. They became semi-divine themselves, ascending to a state between mortal and god. The Sith ritual, designed to bind Zeus through his worship bonds, suddenly had to contain not just one god, but thousands of semi-divine beings all channeling his power simultaneously. The binding circle cracked. Darth Nihilus gasped as energy flooded through him faster than even his infinite hunger could process. Darth Sion's reconstructed body began disintegrating under the strain. The other Sith Lords struggled to maintain the ritual as it twisted into something they hadn't anticipated. Kreia alone stood firm, her understanding of power dynamics allowing her to adapt. "Stop," she commanded Zeus. "You're killing your own worshippers. You're destroying the very beings who gave you presence in this galaxy." "I'm transforming them," Zeus corrected, his voice carrying divine certainty. 42 worlds of mortals are becoming something more, demigods in their own right, carrying fragments of my divine essence. You wanted to bind me through them. Now they are me, distributed across the galaxy. Destroy one, and 1,000 remain. Bind them all, and you'd need to contain half the outer rim. The ritual shattered catastrophically. The backlash sent all 12 Sith Lords flying backward, their bodies smoking from energy overload. Zeus stood untouched in the circle's center, having converted certain defeat into evolutionary transformation for his faithful. He walked calmly to where Talia knelt, snapping her bonds with casual divine strength. "Are you harmed?" he asked gently. Talia looked up at him with eyes that now glowed with faint golden light, evidence of the power he had channeled through her. "I felt everything. Your power flooding through me. I should have died. But instead..." She flexed her hands, and lightning crackled between her fingers. "What did you do to us?" "Made you worthy of worship yourselves," Zeus replied. "I told you once that godhood cannot be learned. I was wrong. It can be granted under the right circumstances. You and the others who survived the transformation are now demigods, Not as powerful as true gods, but infinitely beyond mortal limitations. Across the chamber, Darth Traya pulled herself upright, blood trickling from her eyes and nose. "You've doomed them," she gasped. "Power without preparation, without training. They'll burn themselves out within months, or go mad from abilities they can't control." "Then I will teach them control," Zeus said. "Just as I taught younger gods on Olympus. You Sith tried to exploit my connection to my worshippers. Instead, you've given me the opportunity to create a pantheon in this galaxy, a hierarchy of divine beings who will reshape your republic and your Force-dominated civilization into something new." He lifted Talia effortlessly and turned toward the exit. Behind him, the Sith Lords struggled to rise, their grand trap having backfired spectacularly. Zeus paused at the chamber's threshold, looking back at Kreia. "You understand power better than most, priestess. So understand this. I didn't come to this galaxy seeking to replace the Force. I came to offer alternative. The Force demands balance. I offer hierarchy. The Force whispers. I command. And now I have followers who embody both, connected to me through worship, but carrying divine power in their own right. Your trap didn't bind me. It freed me to create what I should have built from the beginning. Olympus, reborn among the stars." Zeus departed, leaving the Sith Lords to contemplate their failure and the terrifying implications of what they had accidentally unleashed. 42 worlds now hosted populations of demigods, beings of tremendous power who would reshape galactic politics, philosophy, and warfare in ways no one could fully predict. The galaxy had worried about one god. Now it would learn to fear thousands. The transformation spread across Zeus's territories over the following weeks, and the galaxy watched in horror and fascination as a new order emerged. On Onderon, Queen Talia discovered she could command storms with a gesture, her authority backed by divine power that made her simultaneously queen and goddess. On Dantooine, farmers who had been struggling colonists now reshaped their world's ecology through divine will, turning barren plains into fertile gardens overnight. Across 42 systems, 5,000 survivors of Zeus's power surge became the foundation of a new pantheon, lesser gods who ruled their domains with absolute authority. But the transformation came with costs. 3,000 worshippers had died in the initial surge, unable to contain divine energy in mortal frames. Another 2,000 went mad, their minds fracturing under the weight of godlike perception. The survivors, those who had successfully ascended to demigod status, found themselves fundamentally changed in ways they struggled to comprehend. They no longer needed sleep or food. They perceived time differently, each moment stretching into subjective eternities. And most disturbing, they felt Zeus's presence constantly, a divine awareness that connected them all in a hierarchy they could never escape. The Jedi Council convened emergency sessions daily, debating responses that grew more desperate as diplomatic options evaporated. Master Vandar stood before the assembled masters, his ancient features drawn with exhaustion. Zeus has accomplished what no Sith Lord ever achieved. He's created sustainable tyranny backed by genuinely divine power. His demigods rule their systems with efficiency the Republic cannot match and benevolence the Sith never possessed. Populations under their protection thrive in ways that make our Jedi-guided worlds look neglected by comparison. "Then we've lost," Master Atris said quietly. "Not through war, but through obsolescence. What purpose do Jedi serve in a galaxy where gods provide immediate solutions to every problem?" "We serve truth," Master Vrook insisted, though his voice carried doubt. "The Force is eternal and impersonal. Zeus and his demigods are powerful, but limited by their own perspectives. Eventually, their rule will prove as flawed as any dictatorship." "Eventually may be millennia from now," Vandar replied. "Zeus is eternal. His demigods will live for centuries at minimum. We need a response that works within our lifetimes, not philosophical reassurances about distant future justice." Across the galaxy, the Republic's Senate faced similar paralysis. 42 systems had effectively seceded, replacing Republic law with divine decree. But unlike typical secession crises, These systems weren't vulnerable to military reconquest. Each hosted dozens of demigods capable of devastating military forces. And behind them stood Zeus himself, who had already demonstrated he could fight the living force to a stalemate. Senator Bail Organa addressed the chamber, his voice carrying the weight of impossible choices. We have three options. First, recognize Zeus's territories as independent sovereign domain and negotiate diplomatic relations. Second, declare war against a god and his pantheon, accepting catastrophic casualties for uncertain victory. Third, do nothing and watch more systems petition to join his theocracy. He paused, looking across the assembled senators. I submit that only the first option doesn't result in republic collapse within a decade. The Senate erupted in argument, but Organa's logic proved difficult to refute. Zeus wasn't conquering through force. Beings chose his rule. And those choices were delivering objectively better outcomes than Republic membership for struggling Outer Rim worlds. On Korriban, the Sith coalition fractured as recriminations flew. Darth Sion blamed Krya's ritual for empowering Zeus instead of binding him. Darth Traya countered that Sion's impulsive assault on Onderon had forced premature action. The other Dark Lords retreated to their respective domains, abandoning any pretense of continued cooperation. Only Darth Revan remained analytical, studying the situation from his fortress in the unknown regions. He had watched Zeus's transformation of his followers and recognized something the others had missed. The God King had made himself simultaneously more powerful and more vulnerable. Creating a pantheon meant creating beings with divine power, but also divine ambitions. Gods throughout mythology inevitably competed. Zeus had sown the seeds of future conflict within his own theocracy. Revan drafted a single encrypted message to Zeus, transmitted through channels that bypassed Republic monitoring. You've built pantheon on hierarchy. You above, demigods below, mortals beneath them all. But hierarchies breed resentment. Your demigods will eventually question why they serve, rather than rule as equals. When they do, I'll be interested to see how divine authority handles divine rebellion. Until then, congratulations on your empire. Try not to let it consume you. Our Zeus received the message in his temple on Onderon, now expanded into a structure that rivaled Coruscant's Senate building in scope. He read Revan's warning and smiled. The Sith Lord wasn't wrong. Pantheons throughout history had suffered internal conflicts. Zeus himself had overthrown his father Kronos. The Olympians had fought civil wars when ambitions clashed, but that was problem for future. Today, Zeus stood atop a temple that commanded 42 star systems, backed by 5,000 demigods who reshaped reality according to divine will. He had challenged the Force itself and proven that cosmic power wasn't absolute. He had offered desperate worlds immediate solutions and delivered on every promise. He had created a theocracy that functioned efficiently where Republic democracy had failed. Queen Talia, now Goddess Talia, though she still insisted on her mortal title, joined him on the temple's highest platform. Lightning danced around her fingers as naturally as breathing, evidence of divine power she was still learning to fully control. The Jedi request audience, she reported. Master Vandar himself wishes to speak with you. He's requesting truce negotiations. Zeus's eyebrows rose. The Jedi Council acknowledges they cannot defeat me? They acknowledge that continued conflict serves no one, Talia corrected. They're proposing demarcation. Your territories remain under divine rule. Republic space remains under democratic governance, with formal treaties preventing further expansion from either side. They want to contain me, Zeus observed. Recognize my sovereignty over what I've already claimed while preventing future growth. Clever. It prevents immediate war while giving the Republic time to adapt. He considered. Divine mind processing strategic implications across centuries. What's your counsel, Queen Goddess? You exist between mortal and divine now. What do your people need? Talia looked out across Onderon, seeing her transformed world with perceptions that transcended mortal limitations. They need stability. Continued expansion means continued conflict. Consolidation means developing what we've already built into something sustainable, and she hesitated, then continued honestly. They need time to adjust to being ruled by gods. Some embrace it enthusiastically. Others mourn the loss of democracy and self-determination. We've given them security and prosperity, but we've also taken agency. Zeus studied her with newfound respect. You speak like a goddess with mortal wisdom intact. That's rare. Most who ascend lose perspective on what it means to be limited. He turned back toward the temple interior. Very well. Send word to Master Vandar. I accept his proposed truce. Divine territories remain mine. Republic space remains theirs. Neither expands into the other without formal negotiation. And, he smiled slightly, Jedi are welcome within my domain, provided they respect local divine authority. And if Sith attempt further attacks? Talia asked. Then we respond with overwhelming divine force, Zeus said simply. The Sith tried binding rituals and hostage-taking. Both failed catastrophically. If they're wise, they'll focus on easier targets. If not, they'll learn why gods have survived since reality's dawn. We adapt faster than mortals can scheme. The treaty negotiations took 3 months, with Republic diplomats, Jedi mediators, and divine representatives crafting frameworks for unprecedented situation. Recognized theocracy existing alongside Democratic Republic. Zeus attended personally, demonstrating willingness to engage diplomatically rather than simply impose through power. The gesture surprised many senators who had expected divine arrogance. The final treaty, signed on neutral Alderaan, established clear boundaries. Zeus's divine territories. 42 systems formally recognized as independent theocracy under divine rule. Internal governance structures determined by Zeus and his demigods without Republic interference. Republic space. Remaining systems maintain democratic governance under Senate authority. Jedi Order retained peacekeeping authority in Republic territories. Non-aggression. Neither party would attempt military expansion into the other's territory. Disputes resolved through diplomatic channels or neutral arbitration. Trade and movement. Citizens from both territories could travel and trade freely, though divine territories reserved right to require worship oaths from permanent residents. Force and divine recognition. Republic formally acknowledged existence of divine power distinct from the Force. Zeus acknowledged the Force's authority within Republic space. The treaty shocked the galaxy. Gods and Democrats, coexisting under formal legal framework. It was unprecedented, imperfect, and absolutely necessary. On Coruscant, Master Vandar signed the treaty on behalf of the Jedi Order, his ancient hand steady despite inner turmoil. May the Force guide us all through what comes next, he said formally. Zeus signed with a stylus of pure lightning, his divine signature burning into the treaty document with permanent radiance. May wisdom prevail over dogma, he replied. Yours and mine. The two powers, cosmic force and divine authority, looked at each other across the treaty table and recognized a truth neither wanted to speak aloud. This peace was temporary. Eventually, their fundamentally incompatible philosophies would clash again. Balance versus hierarchy. Impersonal energy versus personal divinity. The question wasn't whether conflict would resume, but when and under what circumstances. But for now, exhausted from transformations and battles and philosophical upheavals, the galaxy accepted compromise. Zeus returned to Alderaan and his pantheon of demigods. He began the careful work of teaching divine beings how to rule without consuming themselves in their own power. Some learned quickly. Others struggled with godhood's burdens. A few would eventually rebel, exactly as Revan had predicted. The Jedi returned to their temple and meditated on Force philosophy that had proven less absolute than millennia of teaching suggested. Some masters strengthened in their faith. Others quietly questioned. Master Vandar himself spent long hours in contemplation, wondering whether the Force had allowed Zeus's arrival deliberately, a test, or perhaps an evolution. The Republic Senate governed territories that now looked nervously toward divine domains where problems were solved through divine decree rather than democratic process. Some senators worked to improve Republic efficiency, competing with divine effectiveness. Others began quiet campaigns to join Zeus's territories, seeing security and prosperity as worth the price of worshipping a god-king. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, ordinary beings looked up at stars and knew the fundamental rules had changed. The Force was no longer the only cosmic power. Gods walked among mortals again, offering clear hierarchy and immediate protection in exchange for devotion and obedience. The Old Republic era had been defined by Jedi and Sith, light and dark, endless cycles of conflict balanced by the Force. Now, a third power had emerged, divine authority that stood outside those cycles entirely, offering alternative that challenged every assumption the galaxy had built over millennia. Zeus stood in his temple and felt his demigods spread across 42 systems, each a point of light in his divine awareness. He had accomplished what he set out to do, challenged the Force, and proven it wasn't absolute. Created divine domain within a galaxy that had forgotten how to worship. Established hierarchy in a realm governed by impersonal balance. Whether he had improved the galaxy or condemned it remained to be seen, but he had undeniably changed it forever. And in the shadows of the Force, the living energy watched its cosmic rival with something that might have been concern, curiosity, or ancient recognition. Two powers, one born from reality's fabric, one imposed upon it through sheer divine will, now shaped the galaxy's destiny together. The gods had returned to the stars, and the Force, for perhaps the first time in existence, wondered what that would mean. Zeus's challenge to the Force reshaped the Old Republic era in ways no prophecy had foreseen. What began as a god-king's arrogant confrontation became a philosophical revolution that would echo across galactic history for millennia. The divine territories flourished under Zeus's pantheon, demonstrating that benevolent tyranny, backed by genuine divine power, could deliver security and prosperity with ruthless efficiency. Crime vanished from systems under demigod protection. Infrastructure appeared through divine will. Justice was swift, absolute, and undeniable. Citizens traded democratic freedom for divine certainty, and most considered it a fair exchange. But cracks appeared in the divine hierarchy. Just as Revan predicted, some demigods began questioning their subordinate position. Minor rebellions sparked and were crushed, leaving Zeus to grapple with a truth he'd known on Olympus but temporarily forgotten. Gods who create pantheons inevitably create competitors. Divine power breeds divine ambition. The question wasn't whether his demigods would eventually challenge him, but when he would have to remind them why he was king. The Jedi Order survived, but transformed. The younger generation of Jedi grew up knowing the Force wasn't absolute. That divine power existed as legitimate alternative to cosmic balance. Some found this knowledge liberating, freeing them from dogmatic assumptions. Others found it destabilizing, undermining faith in the light side's ultimate supremacy. The Order fractured philosophically, with traditionalists clinging to ancient teachings, while reformers sought synthesis between Force philosophy and divine acknowledgement. The Sith, paradoxically, adapted more successfully. Darth Traya used her failure against Zeus as teaching tool, training a generation of Sith lords who understood that power came in forms beyond the Force. Some sought ways to achieve godhood themselves, believing that if Zeus could exist outside the Force, so could they. Others studied divine authority as a weapon to be exploited or undermined. The Sith's flexibility, their willingness to use any power source, any technique, any philosophy that delivered victory, served them better than Jedi rigidity in the new galactic order. And the Force itself? It continued binding all living things, flowing through the galaxy as it had for billions of years. But now, in 42 systems, its presence was muted, filtered through divine hierarchy that stood between mortals and cosmic energy. Whether this represented evolution, corruption, or simply change remained debatable. The Force offered no clear answer, as was its nature. Zeus had proven his point. Divine authority could coexist with, even surpass, impersonal cosmic power in mortal governance. He had challenged the Force and fought it to stalemate. He had created a theocracy that functioned where democracy struggled. He had offered certainty in a galaxy drowning in ambiguity. But he had also introduced something the galaxy had never truly known: hierarchical divinity, with all its inherent instabilities. Gods who could be worshipped but also questioned. Power that was personal, directed, and therefore vulnerable to the flaws of personality. Authority that promised eternal stability while being fundamentally tied to Zeus's immortal, but not infinite attention. The old republic would eventually fall, as all republics do. The Jedi and Sith would continue their ancient war. But now, amid their eternal conflict, a third power existed. Divine domains where gods ruled and mortals worshipped, proving that the Force's cycles of light and dark weren't the only path to galactic governance. Zeus stood in his temple on Onderon, lightning dancing around his form, and looked toward the stars he had claimed as his new domain. He had conquered pantheons before. He would maintain this one as long as his will remained absolute and his power unchallenged. And if history repeated, as it tended to, if his demigods eventually rose against him, if the Force found ways to undermine his divine authority, if mortal ingenuity discovered methods to resist godhood, well, he had faced divine rebellions before and emerged victorious. The galaxy far, far away had learned an ancient truth. Gods were real, and they demanded acknowledgement. Whether that knowledge would elevate civilization or condemn it remained the question future generations would answer. For now, Zeus ruled, and the Force watched. And the eternal dance between divine will and cosmic balance continued. May the Force be with you. More stories await.